So Wesleyan committed to becoming carbon neutral back in 2007. There has not really been a plan, like a written plan of how exactly are we going to do that until the past couple of years. Our goal at Wesleyan is that we are buying as few carbon offsets as possible. So we really want to focus our efforts and our money on how do we reduce the actions that create carbon emissions or change those actions so that they're powered by renewable energy. Buildings account for about 75% of our carbon footprint. That's heating, cooling, and electricity. The remaining 25% of our emissions includes air travel, people study abroad, and any air travel that employees do. Those two pieces together account for another roughly 20% of our carbon footprint. The remaining 5% is all very small individual sources. Even if we did nothing else, if we addressed building footprint, we would be well on our way to achieving carbon neutrality. There are a couple of different steps. Broadly speaking, they are converting the underground pipes that deliver heat to buildings from steam pipes, which require water to be heated to about 300 degrees Fahrenheit, to hot water, which requires that the water only be heated to about 120 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. It takes less energy to raise water to 120 to 180 versus 300. There are 8 phases that have been outlined. It's basically just trying to break it down into affordable chunks. The biggest challenge for this is figuring out how we will make it affordable, because between the 3, step 1, step 2, and step 3, it's probably going to cost somewhere in the vicinity of $100 million. Phase 1 is complete, and if the Public Affairs Center renovation happens next summer, the PAC renovation budget will include phase 2 of steam to hot water. So that way the PAC building is connected, and potentially some others along the way, though that's still in discussion. Phase 3 and beyond are question marks right now. The step 2 of the carbon neutrality plan, so after or concurrent with the steam to hot water conversion, we plan to install geothermal wells in several locations on campus, which are a way of heating and cooling. The next step is we will either need to purchase more renewable energy credits and or install more renewable energy on campus. So we have the solar farm out at Long Lane, and we may potentially install more of those. I'm leading the air travel offsets program, which was supposed to be piloted this year, but since no one is flying for Wesleyan, it will presumably be piloted next year. We'll see. The plan is to have a 5% fee assessed on any employee using Wesleyan money to buy a flight anywhere. All of that money will be centrally collected, and then my office will be in charge of purchasing carbon offsets. Once air travel is able to resume, we'll be implementing the second phase, or we'll be implementing the pilot with some academic departments for the air travel offsets.
I joined the Climate Action Group at the beginning of my freshman year. And then at the beginning of sophomore year, we planned the on-campus Wesleyan climate strike, which got the attention of Michael Roth, who then sort of reached out to us a week later and helped us set up a meeting with him where we discussed fossil fuel divestment and accelerating Wesleyan's deadline for carbon neutrality. So several members of Climate Action Group, myself included, developed this presentation and then delivered it to the Board of Trustees about this sort of moral imperative to divest as quickly as possible from fossil fuels, and also to, stop emitting, stop having such a large carbon footprint. Part of that was, basically allocating a lot of money to physical plant and the various infrastructural changes that need to happen to make Wesleyan carbon neutral. A conversion of the pipes from steam to hot water, that did get approved pretty soon after our presentation. I guess one of our goals for this semester is finding ways to convey the importance of going carbon neutral faster to the Wesleyan student body. I think that making our voices heard in a lot of different ways is a good idea. I think that like concerned students could reach out to the Argus and ask if they could write an op-ed about this. They should also get in touch with Sunrise. So I think when people start talking to each other and brainstorming and putting their heads together, there are a lot of different things that can be done. Definitely presenting to the Board of Trustees is only one way. I think that that presentation will go a lot better and be more convincing if we can effectively show them that students really care about this. And maybe that'll be like sending out surveys or trying to get people to sign petitions and stuff like that that will like sort of have tangible proof of student engagement with wanting Wesleyan to pollute less.
In the Eco Facilitator program, my partner and I are working to write carbon neutrality newsletters. And next semester, we might be switching from an email format to being in the Argus, if that's possible, like the newspaper, just to get more more reviews and publicize the plan to make sure students are involved. We sent one out in October, and it's hard to say if like people read it because like I feel like we get so many emails and students are probably were just like, what is this? I've never heard of like a carbon neutrality newsletter. Joining a student group is probably the most effective way to get involved. So there's a ton of different groups on campus that are sort of sustainability related, and just like last year, I think we like created the environmental solidarity network. So like all the different groups can come together, I think on Sunday, and just like connect and see what other people are working on. And obviously like taking classes, like I think part of the sustainability action plan that Wesleyan has put out is like increasing the number of classes and professors who are like teaching about sustainability or like working for the sustainability office. You could be eco facilitator or compost intern, or you could work on the farm. There's like a bunch of different roles.
When President Roth signed us on to commit to carbon neutrality in 2007, we had to set interim goals. And the first interim goal we set was a 25% reduction by 2020. We're still actually calculating our carbon footprint for this year. If we don't hit the target, we'll be fairly close to reaching it. I'm not super concerned if we don't reach that target because now we have an actual roadmap and plan. If renovations like Public Affairs Center and the new science building happen, that will help us, especially science, help us a long way because Paul Atwater right now uses the most energy of any building on campus. So there are things like that that will help us move in bigger strides to get along our way, whereas thus far, most of what we've done has been fairly small steps. The carbon neutrality plan is already one of those steps basically completed, except for the figuring out the finances part.
The biggest obstacle is convincing the powers that be that this deserves $100 million.
The biggest problem was funding because it's like it costs millions and millions of dollars just to like retrofit buildings and like build like renewable energy on campus. And so it's really important that students kind of put pressure on the university to make sure that that's like one of their priorities when they like discuss the budget.
Likely ways for that to happen is either that Wesleyan borrows money or that there's some sort of fundraising campaign to make that happen. Individual/collective changes are much harder to change than institutional ones because the smaller pieces are a lot about changing the culture of Wesleyan. So what are the things that we can do to try to create individual change, collective change, institutional change, and then how can we pull that outside of Wesleyan so that Wesleyan as an institution and all of the students and employees who are a part of this community can bring these things out into the wider world, because that's really how we can have a bigger impact.